just blew up. Nice.
Nice, bro.
It looks like you just kicked it to death.
That's hilarious.
So we began Saturday with high hopes for our usual run and gun fun, on Saturdays, and finding out that once again the Reclaimer works. You can take off from Lorville, you can take off from Area 18 with the Reclaimer, and it no longer just tries to do a flip inside of the hangar bay. It actually takes off, and you can fly it up through the atmosphere. You can use the Reclaimer again. And so we had come up with this brilliant idea. What we were going to do is we're going to place two Cutlass Reds, one towards the front, one towards the rear. And so there would be two teams. One team would set up to kind of guard the Reclaimer and filter back in through the front of the ship if they were killed from the Cutlass Red that they had, or the other team would filter in through the rear of the ship from the Cutlass Red that they had. Just something to do, something to get together and basically play Star Citizen, just an excuse to get out there and have some fun. But unfortunately, there were difficulties. Early on in the exercise, we actually had to abandon our teams and once again band together because I guess someone had a bounty. And so the bounty hunters came looking for us, and because the bounties were, or some of them were on my ship, and my crew members all manned all the guns on the Reclaimer, you could see I very quickly started to rack up crime stat. And with everybody racking up crime stat, the UEE tends to get a little pissed. And when I say a little pissed, I mean pretty much every NPC bounty hunter and their mother turned up trying to hunt us down. It was strange watching them try to maneuver through the ground. Interesting piloting technique. We were very entertained by it. But it's one of these things that even though we get frustrated with the bugs and the inconsistencies in Star Citizen, sometimes it just makes for fun. Sometimes it just makes for good viewing, and if you don't play the game, if you don't get in there and try it every once in a while, so you miss out on fun things like this. It was honestly, it was not what we intended. It was not the outcome that we wanted, but you know what? We had a really great Saturday playing the game. We really, really did. Despite all the bugs and despite all the problems, this NPC Hawk is just the best pilot I've ever seen. Oh my God. Oh man. CIG, don't ever change that. That's so great. But yeah, we just had so much fun. It was great. I wouldn't have traded it for anything, even though it wasn't what we intended. It was just a great way to enjoy Star Citizen. When we started getting just swarmed by all these NPC bounty hunters, it quickly became obvious that that they weren't going to leave us alone, and it was time to get the Reclaimer out of here. But as we were about to take off with the Reclaimer, the UEE Navy showed up. And with the UEE Navy came the UEE Hammerhead. Now, normally, if we were playing a fully released, complete Star Citizen, this would be the time to kind of pick up and get the hell out of Dodge, right? But we aren't in a fully released Star Citizen. We are in, the bits and pieces that will one day become Star Citizen. And the truth is, if the police kill you in game, and this is something that sometimes you still run into people who don't quite grasp this, it's like, if you get crime stat, who cares? Run it through the ceiling, let the UEE or the advocacy or whoever kill you, and reset your crime stat. Like, why even go through the whole business of hacking? There's no point right now the way the game is. So I figured, what the hell? Reclaimer v Hammerhead, let's see what happens. And, I just wasn't going to throw this opportunity away. It has been so long since I've been able to see, the Reclaimer all guns blazing in a battle. And, you can't just throw those opportunities away. Now, the Hammerhead presents a number of problems. Now, you might think, oh, well, just get underneath it. There's less guns. But most of the side guns can face, directly underneath the ship. And the Reclaimer itself is a pretty big target, so it was kind of like counting on the fact that there were so many other people shooting at the Reclaimer that it may not pick, or shooting at the Hammerhead, sorry, that it may not pick the Reclaimer immediately as a primary target, and that would allow us to kind of get all the guns facing and focused on the Hammerhead enough to weaken one shield facing while it was distracted trying to hunt down other ships. I mean, that was kind of the theory behind it. And it really didn't work out. Obviously, the Hammerhead has a massive firepower advantage over the Reclaimer. And I mean, it just kind of goes to illustrate the fact that even, all guns blazing, the Hammerhead the Reclaimer just can't keep up with the Hammerhead. It just can't. It's just the reality of the situation, right? And that's kind of one of the things that when you buy a ship, you have to accept certain realities, certain limitations that go with those ships. As much as you'd like them to be everything that you want, all in one package, and the package that you think is the coolest looking or whatever, the truth is you just can't do everything with every ship. There are limits. But knowing what those limits are and then coming up with ideas to compensate for those limits and possibly eke out a victory is where you go from the theoretical to, actually coming up with functional tactics based on, personal experience. And one of the things that we know works with big ships is ramming. Now, with 2 engines blown off the Reclaimer, I've got nothing to lose, but even though the Hammerhead has a firepower advantage, the Reclaimer's a big boy, and the Reclaimer doesn't stop on a dime, and this Hammerhead is finding that out the hard way. Now, as you can see, one of the rear engines and one of the forward engines is blown off, and I don't think that the flight profile should quite remain intact when you're in this condition. But in this situation, I'm not complaining. And it did become a little bit more difficult to get a hold of, but you know what? It's still, I mean, the handling of this ship in the atmosphere was a little bit ridiculous, but I did really dig the result. And the bonus is, if we actually had salvage in the game, that would probably more than pay for the repairs on my Reclaimer. So, final thoughts. Is the Reclaimer some kind of sleeper battle wagon? No. Now, you could come up with some scenarios, some situations where certainly a Reclaimer could be a threat on the battlefield, but you could probably come up with even more scenarios where the Reclaimer would be more of a problem than it would be a benefit. The truth is, I mean, that is where tactics come in, and that is where making smart choices come in. But you can certainly see a use for the Reclaimer in the future. Once things like salvage and armor and weapons are much more cemented, you can start to make some really intelligent choices along those lines, and you can really start to theory craft what you can and can't do with this ship. And unfortunately, salvage is something that, at least in my belief, is probably tied to the new UI. So until we see this new Miracle 3D UI that's going to fix so many issues, you're not going to see salvage. I mean, that's why we get mining and then we get another iteration of mining, because they already had the mining UI, right?
Whereas in the background, we constantly hear that they're developing this new amazing UI, and they probably just don't want to do the salvage work twice. So they're saying, okay, once we get this new UI in, we're going to do salvage, right? At least that's my personal belief. That's the reason why we're not seeing salvage. So until we get that, we're probably not going to get salvage. But, it does illustrate a point that I spoke about in a few videos previously where, it's good to play the game. It's good to get in and just have some fun. And sometimes unintended things happen that not only make for a decent YouTube video and a funny afternoon, but, you do learn a few things along the way. You do kind of pick up on some of the mistakes and some of the things that you should have done, some of the things that you shouldn't have done, and some of the things that you maybe want to try in the future. Like, could a fleet of caterpillars take on a UE hammerhead?
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.